We take from this response from you that this is a promising sign that the topic of the conference, the transformative power of law addressing global environmental challenges, is a theme that unites us in its urgency and seriousness about the role of our common vocation, the role of law, and the role and responsibilities of lawyers and judges in addressing the accumulating global crises of biodiversity loss, climate change, and global pollution.
There is nothing more important than ensuring planetary health and sustainable growth.
Ladies and gentlemen, for conservation measures to be effective, durable, and sustainable, not only is financial support required, but equally important are the regulatory frameworks, environmental regulations, and laws that must be effectively implemented and enforced.
We need to innovate in environmental law. We need to prioritize an approach that puts the environment at the center of the law and imposes a duty on humans to make choices consistent with ecological integrity and planetary boundaries. We must equip judges with the knowledge necessary to advocate fairly for people and the climate and the planet to truly understand the importance of intergenerational justice. And we must also speak not just of environmental rights, but, I think, of the rights of the environment. There are examples of legal identities granted to rivers and mountains. This matters for indigenous people. It also matters because in this linear economy model where we discard waste relentlessly into environment, does not the environment also have rights?
We are beginning to see citizens across the world invoking legal and constitutional rights to hold their governments accountable. That includes protecting the right to life for present and future generations and preserving their right to a healthy environment.
So I do believe that the transformative power of law can only be achieved if judges interpret the laws that we have in order to deal with the most pressing global challenges that we have.
In the time available, I welcome the recent United Nations General Assembly Resolution 2022, affirming the right to a healthy environment as an essential human right. I do so in the hope and with the expectation that this historic resolution will finally lead to an international treaty on environment and development.
With great power comes great responsibility. Now, evidently, this power, the transformative power of environmental law does come with the responsibility to have concrete impact on the ground that are measurable and that leave no one behind.
There's no way to make a transformation country by country, so we absolutely need the international framework. We need international law. We need treaties that work. We need international financial structures that work, but we need to invent them.
The environmental rule of law as an accepted concept has grown in leaps and bounds and is continuing to evolve.
More recently, we have understood that the environmental rule of law is this key concept that will bring a systematic approach to everything that we do, from the protection of health to the conservation of nature to addressing the major climate change crisis, and so on. Judges are key in upholding the environmental rule of law.
If we cannot rely on international law, then how can we protect the environment? Can we protect the environment without international law? We cannot avoid to face ecological solidarity. The question is, do we want to face it the easy way or the hard way, considering that some will pay the price before and more badly than some of us?
I'll ask the question, where would we have been without environmental law. Attack the sources. In order to obtain sustainable development, you have to get at the sources.
Law can contribute to the transformative change where you embed social norms that society then follows, because law can grant or withdraw rights to natural resources, like land, which is an important part of the environment.
The response, in a sense, to these existential challenges might not be neat, might not be centralized, might not give us the confidence that we need and the reassurance that we need that we will actually solve the problem, but it might nevertheless take us in the right direction. And that's, I think, we have to accept that there are limitations to what we can do in international environmental law and governance. And these are limitations that stem from the nature of international law more broadly.
Because we have a duty. Judges don't have a normal job description. We're supposed to follow a constitution, and we're supposed to follow the laws.
There really is a connection, an intimate connection between fighting against climate change and winning the fight to preserve our environment and winning the battle against all those other things I talked about, whether it's violence against women, gender discrimination, poverty, because you really can't win one battle without the others.
We can just sit and talk about these things, but when we get back to our respective countries, we need to do something concrete so that when we meet each other again next year, we'll have more things to talk about and we'll be able to say to each other, you know, this fight is not lost. This fight is just beginning.
Climate change is probably the great development destroyer in decades ahead. The World Bank also says that climate change alone, everything else equal, will contribute to 100 million more extremely poor people in 2030. And of course, have a substantial negative effect on agricultural productivity. And most of it in the very same countries that are most vulnerable, where poverty is high and where emissions are very, very low. Now we have this double challenge, development, getting the development back, and at the same time within planetary borders.
Almost all of the MDBs, just to begin with, that is the multilateral development banks, a subset of the IFIs, have committed to aligning their activities to Paris. In particular, we are aiming to mobilize climate finance as part of our entire raison d'etre, which wasn't really true 10, 15 years ago.
I know that lawyers don't like very much figures, but we must consider that figures are necessary for law, necessary for a better knowledge of law and a better implementation of the law.
And so this moral and simple call to say we have the rule in place, we're not going to go backwards. It's really important in order to preserve the rights of future generations to their own self-determination.
To think of the concept of more than human rights, meaning of embedding human rights into the biosphere and thinking more holistically and seamlessly of human rights as if humans were part, as we indeed are, part of the biosphere.
And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to take some new ideas forward and take resilience out of our instinct, out of our medicine and health, and put it into action. And it is interesting to me that in most of the acknowledgements of the human right to the environment, the right is phrased in terms of a healthful environment, something that's healthy for us. Resilience is at the core of that health. It's time for us to tease it out, to pull it out of that embedded existence and put it to use. And environmental law has been extraordinary in the progressive development of law, the progressive development of ideas for the ordering of a stable society.
Yes, the recognition of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment at the United Nations is a mandate for change. It recognizes that we have built a global economy on two pillars of exploitation of nature and exploitation of people.
Climate change displacement, and this is looking at measures to give protection to people who are displaced as a consequence of climate change. These people are not defined as refugees under the Refugee Convention. And therefore, I want to explore what legal measures can be given to these people to give them, afford them the appropriate rights that they deserve.
Law needs to be at the center of IUCN. And that, for me, is a fact. The people who are there on the ground implementing these projects, trying to, to protect what they have always had in their hands, many of them communities and indigenous peoples, they're dying. And we lawyers have to do better. We have to do better.
I do believe that we as universities have a huge responsibility for contributing the best we can to the necessary change in society by carrying out the basic research that we still need in so many areas, and also, and not least, by educating our students so they become able to contribute as active, knowledgeable, critically thinking citizens of change.
My big thanks to Christina Boyd, the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law Chair, to the University of Oslo, of course, and the government of Norway, who has been a long-time friend of IUCN.
I hope that the different legal ideas and perspectives and traditions that we shared over the last 4 full, intense days were brought together by the values that unite us. The value of protecting and preserving the environment, the value of humane living and living with dignity within a sound environment, and the value of a green economy and development within ecological boundaries.